From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is the original podcast about consumption, and we are right in the middle of Crummy Movie March. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network, and with me this week is Sean, who is a proud member of the You Run Podcast Network. Sean, how are you doing today?
John, much like my idol Dom Toretto, I live my life one podcast at a time.
Sean, how have you been doing this week? What have you been watching? It's been about a week since we've had a conversation about such nonsense. What have you been up to?
I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like I cram the things that I'm going to watch until the last day or two of the week right before we talk. Do you feel like that at all?
Sometimes. So it kind of depends. With the last week or two, yes, because I've been watching a lot of like rewatch boring shows that, not boring, but just stuff that like we don't like. Everyone who's listened to the show regularly knows that I like Seinfeld and Bob's Burgers and comfort shit like that. And I've been kind of watching that because I haven't really wanted to think too much. But when I get to Thursday and I'm like, I haven't watched anything new or noteworthy, I try to find something that's at least moderately interesting to talk about. So kind of.
Yeah, I was looking through the stuff that I had listened to, the stuff that I had watched recently, and I was thinking, I'm just continuing series. I'm starting really old stuff that I probably should have watched because I like the shows. So along those lines, I've been like whittling away at Welcome to Wrexham season 2 for, it feels like months now. I don't know how long the season's even been out because I don't like keep up with it. It's just like, oh, this thing has a new season. I'm going to watch them.
They only have like 3 seasons or something, something like that.
They're still on 2, but they have a lot of episodes. I think there's like 15 or 16 episodes for just a Hulu show, which is kind of crazy. So I just been catching up with that. Just started watching, very excited. I'm very excited to announce that Biography WWE Legends season 4 just started with all the crazy Vince McMahon shit that's going on. It's really weird to see them use so much footage of Vince McMahon. And how can you not talk about the guy, right? He's been involved, obviously, since the beginning of the thing, but with all the horrendous allegations, they can't like totally cut him out of the thing.
Well, we kind of touched on that a week or two ago, where I'm really looking forward to the, 30 for 30, like 30-piece documentary about all the shit that's going to come out with him. But again, allegations aside, he's such a character. Like, he's synonymous with WWF, probably more so than like Hulk Hogan or any other character that's ever.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're getting at. I don't know if I agree, but I get what you're getting at. So this season,
he's the only, and I say character because I understand he's more than just a character, but he's also been a character for quite a while now
on the show itself.
Yeah, he's the only consistent that you could say has been there from the start all the way up till now.
I'll give you that. So this season 4 just started. Randy Orton. I don't know much about Randy Orton because he started like after I stopped watching. So the new one, I haven't finished it yet. I just kind of started before we started talking, and it seems interesting at least. But I think this season for me is going to be one of those seasons. I think they're getting to the point where all the people that I know, they're not going to talk about. It's all going to be like new guys, or they've been around the business now for 20 years, and to me they're still new. You know what I mean? Like Randy Orton, for example. I don't think of him as being an older guy, but he's probably 40, I'd say, at this point. Last thing I watched, just going to touch on real quick. It was on my Roku, I think, or Amazon Fire or something. They give you all the recommendations, and I always go through all the documentary ones because I'm like, oh, I like documentaries like we talked about last week. I like to watch documentaries that are about real things and not necessarily have some agenda to push at you or whatever. So I watched a documentary. I think it's just simply called Cassette. And it's about not necessarily about the invention of the cassette tape, but they find the owner, not the owner, they find the inventor. They talk to him. Coincidentally, he was the inventor of the CD as well, which is weird. He worked for Philips. And they talk to people about basically what cassettes mean to them, cassette tapes, and how cassette tapes like revolutionized people's lives. And it gave the ability to record things, to anybody. It wasn't just you had to go in a studio. They talked to people like Henry Rollins, Thurston Moore, Ian MacKaye, Mike Watt, a little bit like tertiary kind of hip hop people. So like Bobbito, people like that. So it's not super in depth. It's like just a big nostalgia thing. And they talk about, this is, I think it's from 2016. So they're talking about how tapes are making this resurgence and these artists are releasing things on tape and tapes actually selling better than their CDs because it's such like a niche market. Whereas like vinyl still, they say at that time sold like 2% of all music sold is on vinyl. They said cassette is even smaller than that. So it's like fractions of a percent, but they talked to a couple guys that own a tape, I don't know, a music store, a record store, I guess you'd call it, or whatever, music store. And they specialize in tapes. They have their own label. I think it's called like Burger Records or something. So it was an interesting watch. It's the thing that bothered me about this bothers me just in general about movies or documentaries or whatever. But when they have people that speak in a foreign language and you're expecting that they're going to be subtitles and they're just continuing to have multi-minute conversations in a foreign language that I don't understand and there's no subtitle. So I'm like, oh, let me put the subtitle track on. And when I finally found the subtitle track for it, it just said like foreign language. Okay, well, why do you have this guy talking on the phone for 3 minutes at the very beginning of this movie in German, but there's no subtitles to say what he's talking about at all? So it was just, I almost turned it off actually when that started and there was no translation. I'm like, okay, am I supposed to know what this guy's saying? If I'm not, why is it in this movie? Like, why is there so much of it in here? But that was just a nitpick. And I didn't realize Henry Rollins was this huge cassette tape collector and he takes them into his basement or whatever where he has just piles of them.
His house and now, like I've seen it's video or vinyl and it's ridiculous. Did they go into like cassette tapes and how it kind of revolutionized the demo tape market and how it got bands to trade cassettes and therefore get their music heard to other sides of the country where like, because that was a big thing with, you mentioned Ian MacKaye and, you know, Henry Rollins. That was a big thing with those two. When Henry was like breaking as an artist, he was in a California based band where Ian MacKaye's always been a DC based guy. So a big part of how they got their like music back and forth from one coast to the other is they would mail cassette tapes to each other. And that's how they worked the underground music scene to see who would be on, you know, different bills and whatnot and shit. So did they go into that at all or not really?
They didn't go into it that deep. They kind of just had people on like Damien Jurado who said stuff like, you know, if it wasn't for the tape, I wouldn't be here. It goes into more of like mixtape culture where hip hop, you know, DJs and MCs would make mixtapes and that's where they would sell mixtapes on the street or whatever. And that's how you would get like latest releases from some people. Or they talked about how some bands actually recorded their albums or whatever by just hitting record on a tape player.
Sure.
You know, and recording it because they didn't have access to 8 tracks and 4 tracks.
Have you ever heard one of those albums?
Probably. Sounds like shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
They talk about like multiple duplication and generation of, you know, tape over tape over tape. It was definitely an interesting doc. It was just very like awash in nostalgia, and even the cinematography was very like dreamy in some spots of it, banking on that kind of feel.
Interesting. You said it's on Freevee?
Yeah, it's on one of the it might have been on Plex for free or one of those things. I'll link it in the show notes.
Sounds interesting. Although I do tend to get annoyed by Henry Rollins talking, but
hey, guess what? He talked about Joe Cole.
No way.
Yeah.
I've only heard a entire 3-hour stand-up about that and read a book about it, but he's still talking about it.
He actually wrote a book about just the Joe Cole thing, because I remember seeing it back in the day on one of his VHSs.
I think he wrote one book specifically about it, and then I think it's pretty heavy in a separate book too. I mean, not to sound like a total piece of shit, like that's a pretty big event in someone's life if you have to go through that. So for those who don't know the story of Joe Cole, you can Google it. It's very out there, and I don't want to be a bummer and go over it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, hey, did you hear Kevin Smith had a heart attack?
Yeah. Yeah. Very much.
Or at least it gets that way. Anything else that you caught this week before I babble for a minute?
No, nothing new or noteworthy, really, other than that. Spicy Pepper People, which, believe it or not, is backed by Church's Chicken. And we have watched it on Hulu so often that they play this Church's Chicken.
Wait, what?
So that's Spicy Super Hot, the life of Super Pepper Peter picked a pickled pepper bushel, whatever. So that whole thing, it's all building up to these spicy pepper growers making a sauce for Church's Chicken. And the show is brought to you by Church's Chicken, so I should have known that it had some kind of tie-in. They play a commercial for Church's Chicken on this thing so much with this song that plays that my younger daughter, who's 12, she can sing the whole like song, and they put words up. And when it plays on TV, we are psychotic people, so we sing the song along with the commercial because, why not? But that's, memorizing the Church's Chicken commercials pretty much been the extent of my other TV show watching experience for the week.
So nothing else this week? That's basically what you've been on, is documentaries and uninteresting stuff, kind of like me?
What do you mean? Is that it? Yeah, no, that's it.
So I watched an A24 movie that I actually kind of liked.
Uh-oh.
Still kind of confused by it.
We've converted you.
Well, it has Nicolas Cage in it, so that helps quite a bit. I watched Dream Scenario this weekend, which, have you seen this yet? I don't know. I don't think we've talked about this one.
No, I haven't seen it, but I've read the description and it gives me strong, like, being John Malkovich kind of vibes for some reason.
Kinda. And his character in this kind of reminds me of his being John Malkovich character. It's a little more dark than that movie, or at least it doesn't start that way, but becomes more dark than that. It's A24, so there's kind of like maybe a deeper meaning in it, but I don't think you have to think about it that much. It is definitely a movie I kind of want to give a second watch, and because there's so much like shit it's a movie that takes place very high level. The concept is Nick Cage is a college professor, and he starts appearing in people's dreams. And initially, he's just there in these dreams, and as the movie progresses, the dreams become darker and darker in content, I guess, depending on if you're the dreamer or the watcher. And as a result of that, his real life becomes this phenomenon that suffers as a result of what all these people are seeing in their dreams. So it's kind of like one of those like dream world, real world mindfuck kind of movies in a way, or it tries to be. I don't think it's quite that deep of a movie, to be honest. I feel like the fact that I'm still not like overly I feel like I'm thinking too hard about it. I think if I watched it a second time, I would pick out a lot. It feels like the kind of movie that there's a lot of breadcrumbs in the last scene that you probably just miss that lead up to the scene after it, or maybe two scenes later, if that makes any sense at all. So I think if I watched it a second time, like the mystery of it probably wouldn't be quite as compelling as what it was the first time. But there's some scenes in it where Nick Cage goes full on Nick Cage and is thoroughly entertaining, as you would expect. As far as him acting in this movie, he's not just crazy Nick Cage in this. He actually does a pretty good job acting through the movie. And when he's crazy, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of called for considering what you're trying to do in this movie. Like it makes sense, So yeah, I'm not going to put a hot dog scale on it because it's not the topic of this episode, but it's a weird enough movie and it's different enough from the average A24 film that I'd say it's worth giving a shot. And it's got Nick Cage in it, so how bad can it be, right?
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Staying in the concept of dreams, and this movie made far less fucking sense. I didn't even realize it was about dreams until I started watching it. I watched 1988's The Brain, which is basically just a weird fucking movie about a mutant brain that fucking kills people and their dreams kind of come into play, similar to Dream Scenario, but way more like 1980s acid trip. Like this is 100% one of those movies where you watch, you're like, they're just throwing shit at the fan and seeing what sticks. And it's fine.
Highest recommendation. It's fine.
Yeah, you've seen the movie Critters, right? Or at least know what the critters in Critters looks like.
Yeah.
If you reanimated the critter as a giant brain, that's pretty much what this thing looks like.
I thought it looked like, from the poster, I thought it looked like a mad ball.
A little bit of that too.
Okay.
So equally dated references on both parts. But yeah, if you saw that poster and thought, well, this looks kind of fucked up, like it's exactly what you expect. So that's worth checking out for that.
Your intuition would be correct. It is.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, if you like the kind of stuff we like, then you would not be surprised. And then going a little bit lighter, not going into dream sequence at all, I watched Night Beast, which is a 1982 trauma film.
Yes, it is.
So you're familiar with Night Beast?
Oh, absolutely, I am.
Yeah. This movie is nothing special, but it's everything spectacular at the same time. It is literally just a dude in a brown costume murdering the fuck out of everything that gets in its way. And is there a story? Whatever.
Yeah. Basically a melted Chewbacca that shoots a laser that turns people into rainbows or something, right? Essentially. Yeah,
kind of. There used to be a filter in Photoshop Express that added like rainbow hearts, like it's essentially outlined you in rainbow hearts or things of that nature. And every time he used this laser, I'm like, oh, it's like that Photoshop filter, except 20 years earlier.
And much better.
Yeah, I can only assume that Adobe has straight up stolen that concept for use in this movie that came out in 1982. But it's a relatively short movie, and I like not thinking sometimes. I didn't want to think during this, and that's exactly what this is. It's a guy in a suit shooting people in true Troma fashion. What's not to like?
It's like an hour and 20 minutes or something, right? Or maybe even less.
Right around there.
Yeah, it's like super short.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. If you try to drag that out to a 2-hour movie, I mean, maybe it'd be entertaining, but probably not the way they want it to be. That was pretty much all I watched, though. Like I said, Dream Scenario was kind of the high point, the highbrow point of my weekend or week in Nick Cage watching. So, yeah, anything else you want to kind of hit on before we switch gears and go into our topic of the week?
Well, you two may be ready to give up, but I'm not.
Well, at least you're being consistent. You're being a dumb bitch.
Thanks, Walter. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking about the movie Uninvited.
Hey, John, you know a good podcast I could listen to?
Well, Sean, I sure do. I hear you like movies, and a great podcast to listen to about movies is the Girl and the Gay movie podcast with Beck and Jay. This month, they're going to be talking about the Friday the 13th movie versus the remake, and they're also going to be talking about Deadpool. They're members of the You Run Podcast Network, and all their previous episodes are available there as well. They cover a wide range of movie topics, including action movies, horror movies, comedies, whatever you're looking for, they got you covered. How's that sound?
Sounds pretty good. Let's give them a listen.
So you can go check them out at yourunpodcast.com, along with all the other shows on the You Run Podcast Network. All right, so we're back, and Crummy Movie March is the theme of the month, and we're sticking with that theme.
Excuse me, Crummy Movie Marchathon.
Oh, we've updated it to Crummy Movie Marchathon?
I mean, it's synonymous with Crummy Movie March.
Okay.
But year 2, it's like Electric Boogaloo, right? But this is Crummy Movie Marchathon. So you don't have to use it all the time. I just wanted to make it known on the record.
What Sean said. We start with a third-party review, because that's what we're going to do here. This review is anonymous, but I like the vibe of it, so we're going with it. Past the cornflakes and champagne, this movie is hysterical. 3 stars out of 5. Anonymous. Cornflakes and champagne.
Yes, that'll come into play. So if we go over to IMDb, we look at the storyline, we look at the plot. We're going to look at the plot first. I think that's the one that's on the top. It says, a cat infected with a genetically engineered virus escapes from a lab and goes on a killing spree, finding its way on board a shady businessman's yacht loaded with young guests. And then if we go down to the storyline,
Kinda.
yeah,
That's
a little
kinda.
bit. This person, I cannot pronounce this name because I'm assuming French or Netherlands. What is Yeah, okay. Anyways, it's somebody at
It's Homie a Priest.
yes, Om a Piest at
Homie the Priest.
pobox.leadenuve.nl. So anyways, they write, thank you for your contribution to the show. A bunch of young people are invited to a Caribbean cruise on a gangster's yacht to distract the attention of the authorities. Unfortunately, a mutant cat which escaped from a test laboratory also gets on board and kills most of the passengers.
Went to like South Park voiceover for that.
Stars as the stapler.
So let's start with sound design on this one, because this cat meows a fucking lot.
The sound design in this movie, other than the cat, well, including the cat, inclusive of the cat, is so amazing that they want to just blare shit over what's actually being said through a lot of the movie. And I love the fact that a lot of movies, you know, where they record scenes where people are dancing or whatever to music, they obviously record people just dancing and then they put the music in afterwards. But I think they just went overboard. They don't match, the dancing doesn't match the music, and it just adds to the my enjoyment of this movie, at least.
I totally agree. Where do we want to start with this aside from the meowing cat and the sound design? Like, do we start at the beginning of this, or do you mentioned you want to talk about the cast of this movie? Should we start there maybe?
Yeah, so let me go through the plot a little bit better, more succinct. I don't know if it's succinct at all, but a little bit different of a synopsis. So this is my take on the plot, and then we'll get into the cast. 2 hotties, 2 hard bodies, 2 babes, are looking for a spot to crash during spring break, right? They get picked up by an unscrupulous businessman. played by Alex Cord. We'll get into that. George Kennedy and Clu Gallagher are the businessman's handlers or henchmen or whatever, who like to take care of the bad guys for the business guy. And Rob Estes, who we talked about just last week, and a couple other college turds meet up with the hard bodies, the hotties, and they pick up a cat and they go on this yacht party. Unfortunately, wouldn't you know it, the yacht crew that was actually manning this yacht got super pissed off and they left because they had a big rager on this boat before the college turds got on. So now we have 3 college turds, 2 hotties, a businessman, his henchman, and a killer cat to man the boat for a party to the Cayman Islands. That sound about right? Is that a good? Did I do good, Daddy?
Please don't call me that. I would say if you were to ask me the plot of this movie, I would say quite simply, a mutant cat puppet thing kills people on a boat, and you will be left kind of disappointed with the lack of nudity for a hour and 31-minute movie with 2 hot women that are forced to be in bikinis through essentially this entire movie. And there's a very, very brief scene of nudity. Like, this feels like the kind of movie that there should just be like TNA all over the place. There's really not, which kind of surprised me.
So you started off with the original Twitter length review, and then I think you went to about the same length as mine. So bravo on that. But I'd agree. So let's get into the cast here. I made some notes. So the cast, we're just going to go through the people that are important or that you might recognize. You might recognize George Kennedy because you might recognize him as that other old guy from Naked Gun, and he's the old guy in Cool Hand Luke. We've got Alex Cord, who, again, you might know him from Airwolf, and if you haven't seen Airwolf, then that will mean absolutely nothing to you. We have Clu Gallagher, so he's been in lots of shit. He was Bert from Return of the Living Dead. He's just been in a ton of shit. If you look at his IMDb, he's now dead, but he's got a shit ton of credits. We've got...
You're probably going to know him from Return of the Living Dead, if nothing else.
For sure. And then in no particular order, we've got Claire Carey, who I recognize her from Coach, which would be our loose connection to Craig T. Nelson. You may know him as the broomstick with a shoe on it. We have Sherry Shattuck, who played the ghost in Death Spa, so lots of veterans of this show. And of course...
It's a very callback heavy cast.
Yeah, we've got Rob Estes, this time with blonde hair, who we just saw, like I mentioned before, in Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, and you may have seen him in other shit. Silk Stockings. He's on 90210. He's on Melrose Place, all that great stuff. There's a stunt person. I'm going to ask you if this name sounds familiar, and you tell me if it does, okay? Richard Warlock was a stuntman in this movie, credited as Richard Warlock.
Sure does. I can't remember where he's from, but I know the name.
Halloween.
Oh, yeah. That guy.
Halloween. Dick Warlock. The old wizard Dick. Dick Wizard.
Wizard. I gotta say, if my name was Dick Warlock, I'd probably change my name to Dick Wizard too. Because why not?
I think I just keep it as Dick Warlock. That's a pretty badass fucking name.
I mean, they're both pretty great. So we get a movie, like I said, this does have a mutant cat. They try to explain where the cat comes from or why it's a mutant.
Very briefly.
Yeah, the movie opens in like a vet's office that happens to be in the basement of a parking garage or some shit. And they claim that they're doing experiments to mutate this thing. They're doing radioactive shit. I remember them using the word radioactive at the beginning of the movie, which, okay, whatever. Basically, this cat turns into the most pissed off cat puppet that you've ever seen.
It's really pissed.
Yeah, it looks pretty comical because it's just your average tabby cat. Like, it's not O'Malley the alley cat here with a 40-pound belly. It's a general house cat, probably a 10-15 pound cat, something like that. And then when they
looking at it, could probably drop a few.
Yeah, well, it does, because then it turns into this like flat face cat puppet, which has definitely got a lot of articulation in the jaw, because this little rat puppet thing, which I don't even know if that's an accurate description of what this cat mutates into.
I always think of it, the thing that comes out of the cat is just a smaller, more pissed off cat.
That's probably the best way to really word it. But I mean, if you've seen 80s horror movie puppets, you're going to feel right at home with this. Like, that's the best way I could really describe it.
It's like a wet hand puppet.
Yeah.
It's like Triumph, the insult comic dog, kind of. Like that kind of wet look. I mean, that's just shitty rubber or whatever, but it's got some fuzz on it. It just looks wet.
Now I wish it had a little cigar the whole time that was attacking people.
That's the sequel.
Is there a sequel to this?
I hope so, but I don't think so. I don't know.
You rarely see the cat actually attack anyone on screen. Mostly you see the collateral damage kind of happen either after the fact or as the attack's occurring because there's some sort of budget here. But that's kind of where we start. As you mentioned, Cat gets around town. You see him murder the shit out of some dudes in a fucking pickup truck, make his way. I have no idea how far this lab or whatever is from the dock where the cat ends up going, but it's like Toons is the driving cat for the first like 15 minutes of this movie. He's all over town making his way to the boat.
He's getting martinis at the bar. He's tipping waitresses, going to casinos and shit. Just crazy.
He doesn't like wine. We learn that later.
Little pussy doesn't like some wine.
Exactly. As well said as Mr. Clue Gallagher. And then, he gets to the dock and is invited on the boat, even though this movie's called Uninvited. They very much so pick him up and say, come on the boat here, cat. So title's a little misleading. And we're off to the races at that point.
There's the side story too, which is the college kids that go to some unmarked Ivy League school are, I don't know what they're doing, like eating pizzas and drinking beer at some college bar. And they're like, we really want to go to spring break, bro. So they don't have any money and they tip the guy that's making the waiter, basically a school friend. I don't even know if he's a friend, but they tip him a lottery ticket, which I don't understand this whole thing, but they tip him a lottery ticket that's unscratched, like a scratcher. And the guy's like, hey.
I've seen people actually do that. I always think, what a dick move.
Well, they don't even pay him. They're like, yeah, we're not going to take the lottery ticket again this time, guys. Fuck off. You're going to have to bring us money. And it's like, I got this lottery ticket. And Rob Estes gives the guy the lottery ticket. He scratches it off and it's $100 winner. And somehow with that $100, like they're in this snowy Ivy League school, next scene, like not even any time has passed. It's just cut. And it's, they're in the tropics somewhere, probably Florida. And all three of these guys, the two losers and the waiter dude, are now in Florida. And that's where they meet the two girls. And that's how they get on the boat together because Alex Cord, who plays, I don't even remember the guy's goddamn name. He played Walter Graham. Mr. Graham. He's this big, rich, gazillionaire. Think of an Elon Musk or something.
They kind of imply that he's some sort of criminal, but they don't really say a criminal of what.
Well, he's got some kind of notoriety for his business acumen, but he is definitely pulling shady deals.
Well, I mean, again, the whole premise of them being on this boat is that he's trying to go to the Cayman Islands to pick
up his money out of his bank.
No,
he has to get in a meeting.
I thought he was putting money in the bank. Whatever. He's going to the Cayman Islands to go to his bank. That's the whole premise of why they're getting on this boat.
To do something to put money in his bank account.
Right. And they, like I said, they imply that Walter is a not good dude, but they never tell you what. You're talking about a boat that we're assuming is leaving Florida and going to the Cayman Islands. So you're thinking he's probably like a coke dealer or something. But he also, at one point in the movie, is, I pissed $25 million like it's pissed. I have no problem with this. Take a couple million, kid, and just kind of shoves him along like he's, showboating for him. The amount of money that he claims to be trafficking through this boat with the demon cat on it, this seems fairly irresponsible and also fairly unlikely for something that's supposed to take place in 1988.
25 million back then was worth a lot more.
And that's kind of where I'm saying. I don't know how much drug lords, or I don't even know if he was a drug lord, but for the sake of argument, if let's say he's King Cocaine of Florida, like 25 million a day, is that too much, too little by 1988 standards? I don't know, but it sounds like too much.
I don't think he's a drug dealer, but regardless, they get on, it's whatever a plot device to get on this boat and they shove off and the college turds go into the hull of the ship or whatever, wherever they have the party. And they're eating like rotten food. And they're like, oh, this is so great, man. I'm starving. Let's eat some of this rotten food. And that's where the Wheaties or the whatever cornflakes and champagne come in. It's gross, dude. I'm not eating your fucking junk.
Yeah, well, pretty much everything about the college kids is kind of gross. I mean, they're college kids. They're not supposed to be well off, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, they gave a $100 scratcher to pay for a pizza and a pitcher of beer.
I mean, now you probably would need to add on top of that.
Oh, that's probably just for the pitcher and the pizza. That's not even going to cover your bill. And let alone go to fucking Florida, assholes. So I got to talk about my favorite part, which is coming up of this movie. Clue Gallagher and his fucking teeth. The prosthetic like teeth, like the hillbilly teeth that you get out of the gumball machine that he's wearing. That's my favorite thing in this movie. When he gets that wine, he's supposed to be steering this boat. He's supposed to be like, I don't know.
He's like the biggest doofus in this entire movie.
The way that they explain that he needs to steer this boat, it's like, Albert, you need to steer the boat towards this heading. And he just stands there and holds the wheel. Like, I realize maybe this is like 88 and they don't have some advanced navigation system or something, but you could put a chair, you could wedge a chair into the steering wheel, and that would be doing just as good a job as Albert's doing. But he's getting all loaded off a bottle of wine, and he leaves getting to my favorite part here. He leaves because he gets relieved. He goes onto like the front of the boat, whatever that's called. I'm not a sailor, but he opens the chest to get another bottle of wine, and the cat's in there, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Pussy, Pussy doesn't like wine," and he's like spitting wine between the crack of his teeth.
But he also has the most unapologetic overbite because of the Walmart, quarter machine teeth. As he's doing it, he looks like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
If you were to pick like
my favorite,
the dopey sailor from like a Popeye movie or cartoon, this is what Clue Gallagher is in this movie,
and it's fitting. He plays an asshole, like a really stupid, goofy asshole, very well, and I love him for it.
Yeah, he's kind of good at playing that in pretty much everything that I've seen him in. But he is great in
that's his thing.
Yeah, it's good. Well, as long as we're talking about favorite scenes, I think my favorite scene is when the doofus with the neck herpes gets his finger chewed off.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't seem to, he feels that his arm is poisoned or something. He claims he's poisoned because we find out that much like zombies, that this cat kind of turns you into the dude from Alien that has shit burst out. He fucks you up. It does all kinds of, they kind of make it up as they go.
Yeah, for sure.
So the cat chews this goober's fingers off, and he starts like all of a sudden realizes that his fingers have been chewed off, and he decides he's going to go jettison himself off the ship. He's going to, I guess he thinks he's killing himself. I don't think he would die from the fall that he takes, but I digress.
John, he's got poison in his blood. He's got poison in his blood. He's got poison in his blood.
What I love about it is he not only jumps off the boat, he takes one of the chicks with him. So you get a 2-for kill. You get one goober and one chick. They both fall off the boat, and then 2 or 3 of them jump in after them to go rescue them. And only the 2 that went to go do the rescue come back. Okay, so you let the poison guy go away, I guess.
He's got poison in his blood.
But you can't bring back the other person who's relatively healthy at this point.
She's going to have poison in her blood too. Fuck it.
Yeah, but so would they, because they jumped in the same bloody water. This is the most quick spreading poison that I've ever seen in a movie. It's not the word I'm looking for.
Contagious?
Yeah, there we go. This is the most contagious poison that I've ever seen in a movie. It's like you come within, a cat goober
Sniff
that
it. Sniff the blood. You got poison in your blood.
I also enjoy watching them chum the bottom of the ship with cat food. I don't know where the cat food came from in the movie, but they all of a sudden have a giant plate of cat food that they're just kind of putting all over, trying to bait the cat. I'm not quite sure what their plan was because they put the cat food all over the place.
I think it's
to
tuna.
Bait the cat.
I think it's tuna, and it's poisoned, extremely poisoned. So
well, the cat's already poisoned. So is it going to work? We don't know.
Well, the other thing that I find really amazing about this movie is that there are several scenes when the cat actually attacks people, and they see like that guy, the guy with the neck herpes, when he gets shot in the movie because he's like tussling with, I don't know, somebody, Walt, or one of the henchmen.
He tries to stop Walter from like
raping basically one of the girls. Yeah, the girl from Coach, and he gets shot in the arm.
And the dude from Naked Gun shoots him in the arm. So,
and that all happens, and nobody sees the cat. Like the cat is full. Like the cat bites on George Kennedy's ankle.
You can hear the cat over the gunshots.
Yes. But nobody sees it. They don't know what happened. The cat just bit you. Oh my God! Look at his ankle, man! It went right through his shoe. That's a little crazy cat inside of a big cat. Nobody is bringing up that this cat is insane. But we're gonna crawl around putting tuna out and shit. The cat eventually breaks into they're storing the food away from everything. The cat eventually breaks in and gets to the food, and that's when the woman that was in Death Spa, she finds, they've been holding out on me. They got the food. She starts to get crazier and crazier and crazier as the movie goes on. And she's like, they've held out the food from us. They're lying. The food, it's fine. Look at all this food that's here. And she starts eating the food. And then, when you eat poison food, you get poison in your blood.
Yeah, generally. So, or somewhere. So this continues for some time. This movie is great because it's definitely not worth overthinking. It's literally
not at all. The writers didn't.
It's literally like, cat shows up, cat fucks people up, and let's see what we can do for $50 to make this kind of weird. It does hit a point where eventually they spring a leak in the boat, and the boat starts to sink, which is a whole different effect that's pretty funny. But as soon as I saw them shoot a hole in the boat, I'm like, well, gee, that felt like only a matter of fucking time before they start sinking this boat.
they shoot a hole in the boat and it's like a bullet hole sized hole in the boat. And then they show it later in the movie, maybe like 20 minutes later in the movie. Nobody says shit about it. Nobody says boo. And they show the hole again. And it's like this massive, routed out, perfect edges on this hole. Like someone, they like drilled the hole in it with a bit as big as your arm. And now the water's just pouring in like it's a porthole that's open on the bottom of the boat. Like, what the fuck happened here? What happened to the goddamn boat?
Well, I like the way they show the boat sinking because it kind of looks like someone had a RC boat and they just chose to sink that. So it plays off really well. Of course, the intention of sinking the boat isn't to kill the cat. The intention of sinking the boat is this moron shot a hole in the boat and now it's sinking. So it's more of like a means to the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It kind of comes about an hour and maybe 5 minutes into this hour and 25-minute movie, right around there. So it's like, all right, we got to wrap shit up. Let's blow a hole in the boat and kind of move on with shit. But I think the other thing that might be my favorite scene in the boat is after the boat, spoilers for this wonderful movie. After the boat starts to go down, there's one dickhead kid left that makes it to the life raft or whatever, and one chick that does. And it's like they go for the one more scare tactic.
Oh, yeah. Very Friday the 13th end to this movie.
Well, what I like about it more so than that, because, the cat, again, you can kind of figure out what that means by the very Friday the 13th end. But the part that's great about it,
the cat at this point is also like a person in a suit. No longer a hand puppet. Yeah. It's clearly someone in some oversized rubber suit.
It's like a kid in a suit or something, because it's not quite like adult human size, but it's definitely bigger than the cat. But as they're doing this, like it's raining now for some reason. Raining, quote, quote.
It's the ocean. It
looks like they're just shooting a fire hose at this guy as he's wrestling this like cat mannequin thing. And it made me laugh so hard because, you always go back to the joke when in Forrest Gump, when Bubba's talking about Forrest is talking about all the different kinds of rain. He's like, rain that came down sideways. And this rain it literally looks like they just have a fire hose, like maybe 10 feet off camera. And they just set fire, and that was going to be the rain effect for this shot because it is coming at it's straight parallel to the boat into the water. So it's not falling down at all. It's falling from the right side of your screen straight across. And it might as well be one of those old memes where instead of having dialogue, it just says, because this guy's clearly taking on water as he's fighting this, mutant cat puppet person thing at the end of the movie, which of course leads to a cliffhanger, leaving it open for a new movie. But I don't know if we're ever going to get that.
Oh, tragedy.
Disappointing. But I mean, there's so many things that happen in this movie and it's all equally ridiculous, which is kind of what makes it fun. This is very much so like, this is the definition of we made a creature feature, but it came out as a comedy, which wasn't entirely intentional. Is that a fair statement?
I think that, yeah, we made a creature feature. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't know what the hell we were going to do. We just said, hey, let's make a movie. And so we did. And this is the movie that we made. That's what it feels like basically this movie is.
And to be fair, it's more cohesive than some movies that we've watched for this show.
Absolutely. It is. I mean, it does drag, though. There are a lot of parts where it's just kind of like, okay, what's the point? Like, the thing isn't killing enough people. There's a lot of people to be killed, too. And some of them, like we talked about, they just fall off the fucking boat. They don't even they're just unceremoniously ditched.
Yeah, and especially if you compare it to the opening scene where the cat gets out and fucking annihilates two people in hazmat suits, and it reminded me of Creepshow when what's his name is in the crate and just see blood splatter fucking everywhere. It kind of reminded me of that. I don't know. It's held together by dental floss and shoestring, and sometimes those strands are stronger than others. So
I don't know how that would work, but I'd be very impressed to see it.
Well, it's called Uninvited. It came out in 1988, and we just watched it this week for the topic of the show.
And we're talking about it.
Is there anything that I'm missing that you want to really hit on? Like, I feel like this is a weird movie because I will say that this is a movie I kind of feel like you have to watch. Like, you really have to watch this movie to experience the genius and the insanity of it.
And the horror.
Yeah, sure. But I also feel like the more that we talk about this, more we're going to go in circles and kind of take things out of context because we don't go start to finish on stuff.
I think this movie is very difficult to actually talk about because you take away a lot of the mystique. Like, some of it is just indescribable. Like you're saying, you just have to see it. It's something that you have to witness. And I think regardless of what we say for hot dogs, this is something that people need. If you have not seen this movie before, if you have, definitely tell us your thoughts on it. But if you have not seen it, you need to see it. And then you need to tell us what you thought about it. Because it is ridiculous. And it's got people in it that you know. You know, George Kennedy is like a zillion years old in this movie, and he's barely moving around, but he's still acting his ass off because that's what George Kennedy does. Clue Gallagher does a great, everybody's just great in it. So I think it's just a movie that you have to witness for yourself. And again, if you haven't seen it, watch it. Tell us what you thought. It'd be really interesting to get everybody's take.
And if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, it is pretty easy to watch. It's available on Tubi, Shudder, Plex, Roku, Freevee, and Flix Fling. I don't even know
whatever the fuck that is.
It's available for free on all those. If you want to buy it, you can do it in all the usual spots for anywhere from $2 to $5, basically.
Yeah, you could buy it for 10.
You can buy it for 10 on Flix Fling, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah.
So, this is a pretty accessible movie. With that said, what time is it, Sean?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
You want to kick us off on this one?
No, I'll let you go. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I do want to say before I get into that, I forgot this movie was suggested during one of our Q&A sessions or question of the week sessions by Boomer Podcast in the Woods. They did an episode about this as well, so you can go back and find that if you want to. But Boomer, this is a loose request, but I'm going to count it as a request because we talked about it, so that counts. Thank you for suggesting this, and I'm glad that we got to enjoy it. So.
Question mark?
This is actually a really fun movie. Like, and you hear the term so bad that it's good thrown around all the time. And I usually think that's really just a shitty way of saying like, this was bad, but I was entertained. That's exactly what this movie is, though. This is a bad movie that looks bad and is no budget, but it's thoroughly entertaining. The cat looks ridiculous, and that kind of lends to the charm of the movie. And yes, I do mean charm. I'm charmed by how ridiculous this damn cat looks. The characters are all insufferable, but that also makes you kind of laugh at them and kind of find enjoyment in their suffering, I guess, especially Walter and Naked Gun Guy. Like there's some characters in movies like this, you're like, when's that guy going to get got? And it pays off pretty well. I mean, is this a movie that you absolutely have to watch? In my opinion, yeah. Like it's dumb and it's cheesy and it's all those things, but it's fun. And for something that's so accessible, go flip it on and then flip us off and tell us what you think about having to watch it. I'd give this a solid 7 radioactive mutant catsuit hot dogs out of 10.
That's a high rating. So I've seen this before, and this was Boomer definitely recommended it, and it was one that was on my radar for Crummy Movie March for the second go round on this whatever thing, this ride that we're on, I guess, whatever. But when I knew that you were watching it, because you sent me a text like, hey, you know, is this the movie that we're going to be talking? Yeah, that's the one. Then I was like, oh, I'm really curious to see what John thinks. And I didn't know if it would be quite something that you would think was amusing or just be tedious, because I think the way that the movie is paced, there are just these little spurts of things that happen. But there's so much just nonsensical bullshit that happens in this movie and very huge leaps of logic. One of my favorite leaps of logic, I guess, in this movie is when they find this little scrap of fabric that has blood on it. And the waiter guy from the college, he's a biology doctorate candidate or whatever. He's getting his doctorate. He's like a credit away or some bullshit. And he finds on the boat, he takes a sextant, which is like a navigation tool that has like an eyepiece on it. And he takes a magnifying glass and sticks that on top and drops a little dribble of water on the blood, and he can see it. You can see it on a cellular level moving around. I'm like, this takes the cake. This is the movie in a nutshell. Just huge leaps and bounds of logic. Shit doesn't make any sense. Just go with it. Just ride. The actors, as I mentioned in the cast, if you've watched like 80s TV or 80s movies or early 90s, you probably recognize like most of these people, except for the guy that has the neck herpes. That's like a birthmark or something, by the way. I thought it was a hickey.
I thought it was a hickey too.
That guy is a hickey this whole movie? That's awesome. But he's a grown person, and if you go on his IMDb, he still has it. So either it's a staph infection that never went away.
Maybe it's a new hickey.
Maybe it's a constant hickey. It's just hey, you got to do it right there, babe. This
I just really love getting my neck sucked on for the last
47 years.
Yeah.
But it's just fun. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It is slow at times, so just go into it knowing that it's not going to be like this super fast-paced, like, killer cat puppet movie. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I got to give it 6.5 meows out of 11 hot dogs.
Yeah, meow. So the question of the week this week is, what is your opinion on cats? So we're being very creative for Crummy Movie March upon. We're going to start on Twitter. or X, because that's what we want to do. Speaking of Boomer, over at Podcast in the Woods, you follow them at Woods Podcast 1. He says, Gabby and I have a beautiful little terror named Maya. They are the cutest little monsters, and it always strikes me funny that they would take over the world and kill us all if they could. Those sweeties. They also included a picture of Maya, and it is hiding behind a curtain where you can clearly see Maya.
It's hiding behind a curtain where you can clearly see Maya.
It's like it's a curtain for windows that goes all the way down to the floor, but it's sort of see-through.
Explain to me what a curtain is without telling me what a curtain is.
Anyway, the Krusty Boys chimed in and said, Molly is my ride or die. She walks my kids to the end of the driveway to wait for the bus and then waits for them to get home. She has slayed so many of rodents. This is another cat that is licking its chops, probably going to kill us. At Just Jody Hart says, when a cat truly loves someone, you know the person is a good human. At Sue World Order says, kind of the same thing. They say cats are the best. I have 3 and I live every cat I see. I think they meant to say love, but okay.
I live vicariously through every cat that I see.
Yes. Our friends over at Dissect That Film took a different route. They said they're mean and scary. Left it at that. Let's see here. King Freak 1986 on Twitter said, male cats are awesome. Female cats are assholes. For sexist comment about cats, I like it. Fight Flick FMK at Fight Flick FMK says the devil's pet. And then Killer Steven says successful people, unsuccessful people, and people who love cats. And there's pictures of coffins in Egyptian. I don't know what the fuck's going on here.
Is it like a Venn diagram or something?
I don't know. And then lastly, on Twitter, our friend Pearl, who is at HissyFaceX, said they're the perfect little murdering machine. I love them. I had fully accepted being a stinky old cat lady, but the fates made me a stinky old mom instead. I would have 10 cats if I could, but the most I've had is 4. They killed all sorts of things, and they're amazing. Sounds like you have some sociopath cats, but hey, that's kind of what cats are. So we put this on Facebook. No one responded to that, so fuck that.
Fuck you.
Right. On Instagram, though, Jordana over at Pretty Killer Podcast, she said, they're cute, but they're really just assholes under all their cuteness. And Das Chaser, who's at Das Chaser, said, too volatile to keep as a pet. Flip of the coin between chill and I'm gonna gut you like a fucking fish. So it appears Instagram is far less accepting of cats than Twitter is.
I knew I didn't like Instagram for a reason.
Here we go. Sean, do you have an opinion on cats that you would like to share?
I like cats and cats like me.
Okay. I had a cat. I no longer have one. That's pretty much my opinion on cats.
I had a cat and then I didn't.
Pretty much. Guy, think you want to chime in on this one before we start to wrap up on the weird cat boat cast?
No, I think everything that we needed to say has been said. It's just a fun movie. This movie marchathon, Crummy movie marchathon, this Crummy movie let me start that over. This Crummy movie marchathon has been just a lot of fun so far.
See, we're only halfway through. We haven't even got to the coup de grace of Crummy movie marchathon this year.
I'm not looking forward to one of these movies.
Is it the highlight reel one? The one that we've been kind of saying we need to do an episode on, but kind of been putting off for a year now?
I don't know if I know which one that is. I can't even think. Is it Boogers? Oh, no. I'm looking forward to that one. Like big time looking forward to it.
Is it Boogers?
Yeah. It's the other one that I'm not so hot on.
Oh, well, we could always change things if we want to. Anyway, won't matter. I'd say you can let us know if we should change up the movie next week, but we're going to record it before you even hear this. So your feedback's not needed. But if you want to give us feedback on anything else, including what else we should watch, whether it's March or otherwise, you can do that in all kinds of places. You can find all our old episodes at our site, which is crap.town. It's not at crap.town. Maybe it is, wherever. Crap.town, it's a website. You can go there. You can find our old episodes. You can also go to yourunpodcast.com where all our old episodes are, as well as all our fellow You Run Podcast Network podcasters and creators. And we are on social media all over the place. We're at Dewey Pod Monster. Follow us there. You can argue with me. You can tell me I'm an idiot, or you could try to make me watch Chucky movies and Rob Zombie movies, and I'll tell you no. Or we'll do it for the show if we're going to do it. At least if I'm going to complain about that, put it on here. Sean, what else am I missing? What am I doing? Who am I? Meow, meow.
Who am I? Who are you? If you want to listen to the other podcateers on the network, you can find them at John said, yourunpodcast.com. If you want your question of the week answered on this show, I don't know how we would answer your question because you don't ask questions. You give us answers. But do that at Dewey Pod Monster on all the social media networks. Big shout out, big thanks to everybody who's answering the poll questions. Good things go to them who wait. Thanks also to those people who are leaving feedback on the Spotify page If you want to follow me and all my craft beer adventures, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com, or you can find me on all the social media networks. I don't post there, but you can find me at Draft Therapy.
Yeah, like once a month you respond to something that I put up. But that's about it.
Yeah, our Twitter. Let me just say, I do not have the wit to be posting shit on social media. Just not funny enough. I think what I say is funny, but not funny enough for social media. Can't be on all the time like that. That's not how I work.
I don't think I'm funny enough for social media either, but one of us has to do it.
That's true.
I'll take the bullet.
Thank you.
So.
You're appreciated.
Or maybe more accurately, I'll take the mutant cat that came out of the other cat.
I want to take that one. It's cute.
It's going to poison your blood.
I got poison in my blood.
With that in mind, we'll be back. We're going to go ahead and get a blood car wash or whatever Keith Morris does that keeps him alive. We're going to, just like a Chevy, take it all out, put new blood in, and we're going to come back refreshed and talk about some other Crummy movies to go through. Crummy movie marchathon.
Say
next
that 5
week.
times fast.
No, same Dewey Podmonster place, same Dewey Podmonster channel. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.
There's poison in my blood.
Meow.
Your
Meow, meow.
laws, American asshole.
John, much Mike. Shit. Much Mike. Much Mike. I have
don't
something
even know what you
prepared
just.
that I want to say.
Meow, meow.
Actually. Yeah. Meow meow.
I love that took 3 takes to come out.
Much Mike.
Much like meow meow.